straightening a piece of iron is metaphoric to our lives. All parts of the process are essential for us to take our final straightened shape. It doesn't just happen because you want it. It doesn't happen overnight. First, we have to go through the fire, and then after that, we get hammered on. And then a resting process is essential, like the quenching that you do with hot iron and water. It makes it strong. And if you skip that part of the process with metal, it gets brittle and completely falls apart. And we're no different. And I had a visual of this entire process recently when I rediscovered a quote when I heard another motivational speaker speaking about it from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And it simply said, stand straight, not held straightened. And we aspire every day to wake up straightened, like a sharp edge on an iron blade. But that process to get there isn't an easy one. We don't just wake up straight. It doesn't just happen overnight. We have to be hammered on, forged, and held straight through our own growth experience until that one day that we're able to wake up and just stand straight and not have to be held straight. And I first thought about this and pictured that whole process of working iron and working metal. In the heat of our lives, you get hammered on. And when the stress subsides, you heal from being weakened. And if you don't, you eventually will break. And once things have cooled down and you've been hardened, you're able to take on an entirely new shape just to be heated back up in this process we call life. And you're stronger because of it, and you're able to take on that next larger, bigger challenge.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
What exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. The universe is a celebration. It's a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wow-wee.
For those of us seeking a life of meaning and purpose, capturing fulfillment in every moment of now, seeking the truths of our reality so we can live this life to its fullest. This is the Live This Life podcast. And I'm your host, Hugh Cummings. I'm here to inspire you to ask yourself the question every day. Are you living, or are you killing time? Straight, not straightened was actually how I heard this one represented in that talk just recently. And, I remember reading this one through the years, and I really had no idea what this one even meant. It didn't really sound that profound on the surface. And I've glazed right past it quite a few times, and the matter of fact that it did glaze right over and it never hooked me. It kind of amazed me that I actually didn't stop to discern it just a little bit more. But then I finally did when I heard it explained just recently. And it came up for me synchronistically on a morning where I was having sort of an abnormally difficult morning for me. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. The way that it was presented was a little bit different than my interpretation and what I've actually heard other people interpret it as well. And the person who was talking about it was basically saying, this saying from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who, if you're not familiar with him, was one of the most amazing philosophers from his time. He was a Stoic philosopher who believed in leading a very moral life, that it would lead to an amoia, which was what they coined as a well-lived life. And what he said was, stand straight, not straightened. And so the variation I heard of it was just basically straight, not straightened. But basically, it was meant that we need to strive to be straight. You got to be it to see it. And ultimately, your goal is to just be able to be straight, not have to be straightened out on a consistent basis. But to get there, you have to put in the work to straighten yourself. The straight is the end result, but the straighten is the act that's going to get you there. And on this particular day, I needed to hear this one It was very hard for me to even function at all that day. It was one of those days that I probably should have just bowed out of everything and taken a mental health day or personal time just to get myself out of that state. You know, this one came up for me on my way to the gym. I made sure that I was going to get there that day. You know, you guys have heard me say many times before that there's certain non-negotiables you need to have in your life that if you're in a place, you use those things. They are your healthy vices. You know, you stay well rested, you stay well hydrated, you do all these different things. You jump into the gym if you have to. You do everything that you can to get you out of those states in a healthy way. You try to stay away from substances, and you stay away from the dopamine hits, those immediate things that are going to give you the short-term reward, and you go do something that's going to get you the change of state that's going to actually shake your body. A lot of people are into the cold plunges and ice baths and stuff like that now. And in this particular morning, I was making sure that I was going to get out of my funk that I was in and get a great workout in, at least to start my day off that way. And when I heard this talk, it just grabbed me and I was like, wow, okay, yeah, this is the one I need to hear this morning. I'm listening. All right. This person who interpreted it, like I said, it was a little bit backwards, I think, from what the interpretation was supposed to be. But that's a great thing with philosophy, is that it can just be interpreted in whatever way is resonant with the person who's receiving it. And this person, this guy named Wes Watson, he's an amazing guy. He's been through prison. He's been through a lot of really difficult stuff. Definitely is a little bit of some of the flavor of the stuff that he presents is with me, and some of it isn't. But he's a motivational speaker. He's been through the shit. He's been in prison. He's been through a whole lot of stuff. Like, you can tell by the way the guy talks that he's definitely walked the walk, and he's been in certain places, and he's turned himself around quite a bit and finding meaning in life. And I'm actually going to play a quick blip of what he said in that talk that day that motivated this entire episode that I'm going to talk about today.
Every day I know I'm going to wake up just empty, and I have to refill myself. That's why Marcus Aurelius said, straight, not straighten. Every day you wake up and have to straighten yourself. You'll never just be straight. And the more low you feel, someone who wakes up feeling extremely low, they have the ability to reach a higher high. That's the law. That's the law of polarity. If you don't know massive lows, you can't know these huge, huge highs and these great feelings, because you don't even know what a low feels like. Most people, they live on like an even plane of existence where they don't know high highs, they don't know low lows, and they kind of just wander through life barely doing shit. But that guy who looks himself in the mirror, and like bodybuilders are a great example, because they're like, they look in the mirror and they look great, but they're like, no, I could be better like this. I ain't doing shit. That happily dissatisfied man, that who's never gonna be good enough, he will always have that feeling. He needs to feel down to bring himself up, and the work is the only thing that puts him there. Because
many of us have had those days where we wake up and we just don't have it in us. You know, no matter what it's for, it's one of those days. And anyone who says they don't is either very, very rare, or they're lying their asses off. But not many people can wake up with their running shoes on. That's the reality of it. Not many people wake and jump right up out of bed and they just start crushing the day before the sun even comes up. It's a rare amount of people, but to even get there, for those people who do jump up and hit the ground running, or at least get up, have to shake the cobwebs and straighten themselves out, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of conditioning. And for those of us, I'm one of those people. I'm an early riser. I love to get things done before the sun even comes up and know that I've accomplished a ton of stuff before people even get out of bed. And Wes's interpretation of this was that you're never going to just wake up straight, that every single day you've got to wake up and straighten yourself out. Then you just need to expect that it's never going to happen. Expect that you have to straighten yourself out and take that low experience of feeling low and take it up to a high, and that's a law of polarity. And I loved what he said. I love the place he was trying to come from with that. I never like to speak in absolutes, and even though I just did. I don't like to speak in absolutes, because you can't cut anything out. And if you have any sort of talk, self-defeating type stuff, if you're, you say, I've said many, many times that I'm not someone who's intuitive. No, I'm someone who historically has not been intuitive, but I'm not going to affirm constantly that I'm someone who's not intuitive. I would love to have a better intuition about things. So I'm not going to affirm that I don't have intuition. And I think it's self-defeating talk if you're going to say you're never going to wake up just straightened. You're going to have to straighten yourself out every day. No, there's no doubt that, you're going to have to straighten yourself to a certain extent every day. But then the process of it, the habit building, it's hopefully going to get you there to the place where you can stand straight and not be held straightened. And that was what the phrase from Aurelius originally meant. Be that thing, not something that has to be constantly corrected or straightened. Or at least that was my interpretation of it and how I'd heard it interpreted since then, since I dove back into that and heard some other people mention that phrase. The act of straightening something consistently will ultimately result in a state of something like straight. It'll be the result of the process of straightening your thoughts, conditioning yourself out of that lesser state. And that's something that is desirable for everybody, to get into that higher state and straighten yourself out, and ultimately not have to straighten yourself out, but wake up and have that be your new norm because of the habits that you've built. But that comes with a process. Like I said in the beginning of the episode, it's like forging a bent piece of steel. Enough hammering and shaping that red hot piece of iron and quenching it in the water, letting it take a rest, is what makes it strong, and it changes its shape into the desired end result. And a new form that will ultimately take place through that process is, one that is much stronger every time it goes through that process. And it's something to remember, the whole thing that you can be bent and not broken. You want to take it right to that limit and then quench and let yourself rest. And knowing that process, knowing that whole picture, you picture the whole thing in your mind, is exactly what I thought of when I heard this talk. It's picturing that entire thing and knowing that you got to wake up and go through that process many, many times. The knowing of that process sometimes makes those difficult times much easier for us, because it's like, yes, we know we've got to go through this. It's like those tough times in the gym. I use a lot of analogies in the gym because you got to dig deep sometimes when you're doing physical activity. If you're an athlete or you're playing sports, and no matter what you're doing, there's a lot of times you got to dig deep to stay consistent and make it through what you're trying to make it through. And there's a difference between completely quitting and not letting yourself even experience the improvement that comes from that hard work. And then you put in that hard work and you see what comes from the other side, and that process of straightening. And when you're there, you're doing something great for yourself. You're in the process of that straightening. You know that the end result, when you become straight and you're not having to be held straight, you're just there. You know that the end result, when it comes up, is going to be a very rewarding one. And over the years, I've become so attuned to these concepts and philosophies and everything of vibration and the highs and the lows of life, and everything it actually means to us in our life and within the universe in general. Nikola Tesla was famous for saying, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, you got to think of the matter of energy, frequency, and vibration. And we didn't quite know what he was saying for a very long time, honestly, because we just didn't understand it, and we kind of blew it off. I know that I wasn't taught anything about Tesla when I was in high school, and didn't really know anything about him up until the last 10 years or so. But what he was saying, it's all coming to fruition with scientific explanations of things that we're doing with the Hadron Collider and discovering things about frequency and vibration. And that energy that you hold within yourself, every physical thing in the universe is made up of energy at its smallest fundamental particles. And you have to think about that, what resonant frequency you hold, the one that says you're never going to be this and you're never going to be that. Well, that's the resonant frequency you're going to hold. So don't tell yourself those things. But when you're telling yourself, like, I may not be in that place, but I'm going to go through a straightening process that's going to get me there, it makes the process less daunting, knowing that you're putting in some hard work right now, because the end result of what's going to come from this is going to be something that's going to be hardened like steel, which is the mindset that I really resonate with. And I also resonate with, it's going to be the who that's made at the end of it all. It's not so much the how, it is the who. And that's going to be where we're going to jump off today on this part of the episode. But first, I want to make sure to give everybody on Wisdom who's listening along heads up that we're going to be doing these episodes live, likely on the weekends. Anybody who's here at the end portions of the episodes will sometimes invite people up. And if you are invited up on stage, you could make it to the final cut of the episode. It depends on the contribution, the timing, and all that kind of stuff. But anybody who's listening on Wisdom, if you're not following along on there, I will leave the link to Wisdom in the show description notes on the podcast. And you can join in, you can download the app, find me on there, and then join along. The notifications will let you know when we're going live. So you can listen to the episodes first, likely days before it's actually posted everywhere. And then you have the opportunity to contribute on the episode itself if you're one of those people that's invited up on stage. So if you're listening along on YouTube, please subscribe and follow along on all those different platforms that it's on. Whatever platform you happen to be listening on, please give us those ratings and reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts. We have been charting extremely high around the world lately. 2024 has started off really great. We've been in the #1 spot in spirituality in Apple Podcasts in several different countries, including Lithuania. A huge shout out to them. And in the top 10 in the Philippines, Hong Kong, and a few other countries. So, over 110 countries around the world so far. It's been an amazing thing. And that comes from people sharing the podcast, listening along and following along with everything and sharing with family and friends. And please don't forget to hit us up with any questions or episode topics that you might have. If you send me a message through any of the social media accounts, we'll get it. And if you don't have a social media account, you just want to send an email just to say hi, or if you have an episode concept or question, you can send it to connect@livethislife.org. There's a lot of talk about the cost of eating healthy, but it's far less expensive when considering the price of sickness. That's why I've partnered the podcast from the start with one of the highest quality supplement companies on the planet, Organifi. Our food market in the Western world is more bombarded by carcinogens like glyphosate and preservative ingredients that you can't even pronounce, all of which have a detrimental effect on literally every part of your health. Being a 2-time cancer survivor, I want to stay a survivor, which is why I do everything in my power to ensure that I'm living the healthiest life I can so I can be here for many years to come. That's why I turn to Organifi for all of my supplement needs. I start my day by adding the green juice and complete protein powder to my post-workout shake, and I end my day with the gold chocolate to help my mind and body recover from the demanding life that I live. I'm into my 40s and people ask me all the time, what's your secret recipe? And part of that answer is always Organifi. If you're serious about investing in your health, then adding Organifi to your daily healthy living regimen is a must. Head over to OrganifiShop.com. That's OrganifiShop.com to check out their amazing line of products. If you find something that you want to dive into, use the promo code LIVETHISLIFE, all one word, and get 15% off of your purchase. So like I was saying, it's not the how sometimes things are going to get done. It's not the how you're going to get those things in life that you want. It's the who. It's the who that's going to attract that special person that you wish to attract into your life. It's the who that's going to get that job that you really want to work. When you're that person, those things can't help but find their way to you. Like attracts like. Love will attract love. Living life and wanting more life experience out of your life is going to bring you exactly that. It's going to bring you more fulfillment. And it's going to attract more enjoyment out of your life. You have to be that person. You have to be the person who is out there getting after those things. It's not about the how. And a lot of us get lost in that. We're always trying to figure out how we're going to make more money, how we're going to find that person, how we're going to do this and that. Once you figure out that it's the who, once you figure out it's who am I going to become, that those things are just natural for that person, the how then just comes naturally to that person. It all just starts to flow to you. You can take this podcast for an example. If I would have just started this podcast when I was at my worst, before I put in any of the work that I had put in to transform my life, and I didn't embody the type of person that could be viewed by the outside world in any sort of a valuable way. I want to be viewed by people. I want to be viewed by my son as a great role model, a great partner to my wife and everything. The type of person that people would want to come to when they had a problem rather than the person they would avoid. That type of person is going to be remembered and revered. And that's a motivation in life that got me to some of the places that I'm heading into right now. A person who enjoys living an amazing life. And I had a lot of work to put in to get to that point, to be that person. Back before that work, that guy would not have had a podcast anybody would have listened to. There was no vulnerability, no insights on life, no relatability, and no appreciation for what life actually was all about. And it didn't happen overnight. It took years. And it's going to continue to take years. I'm by far, far from the end of the journey that I want to be on. But it was the who I wanted to be that was my motivator. It was the who I wanted to become that was going to get me there. And once I did that, the how showed itself effortlessly. The how that most of us sit there and try to ponder and figure out, and we stay up late at night, like, how are we going to solve this problem? How am I going to get to this? The thing is, those things work themselves out in crazy ways. The universe can lay itself out in our lives better than any possible plans we can put together. And when those things flow, it's all that sort of magnetism and vibration that comes to the person that is the who. The who will attract those things, and the how won't matter anymore because it just shows up. But you have to go into that process knowing where you want to be, knowing the who it is that you want to be. You have to keep working each day to be that person. And until then, you don't get down about the process. You don't get down about how much process you're not making, or that you're not where you want to be, or whatever it is that we tell ourselves sometimes when we're not exactly where we want to be. You don't have to be down whenever you feel like you can't straighten yourself up on certain days. You don't give up, and you don't, even if you slip in your consistency, that's one that happens with people so often, especially this time of year. We're recording this in February, and so many people fall off their New Year's resolutions, which is another reason why I don't like those things. They fall off, and then they just give up for the rest of the year. And then they get back to December and January of the following year, and they pick it back up again. Just because you fall off the wheel doesn't mean you don't get right back on. Those habits take a long time to build. There are things that I've been building on for years, simple stuff that I get on sometimes and I fall off the wagon. And when I finally realize that I'm off the wagon, I do the best I can to get myself right back on and keep on going to try and stay on that consistency. You have to build the habits and the patterns that make the who. So to give up when you just realize, like, I haven't been to the gym in a week. Well, you're entitled to have a week where you're not feeling good. You have a week where you're busy. You just weren't able to go. Now that you recognize it, what's your excuse today? Get out there and go and do it. Start that anew right now. You got 30 days in a month. You missed 5. Great. Well, don't miss any more. You do your best, but don't give up. People get down on themselves so much, and they get mad at themselves, and it's easy to get frustrated. And, I was there that day a couple weeks ago where, I was tired. I was really down on myself because I took way too long early in the morning to drink my morning coffee and wake up, and I sat down and I did the death scroll thing, moving through. And before I knew it, I wasted way too much time, and it threw off my entire mood. And I literally chewed my own ass while I was rushing to get myself out of the house to make up for that lost time and dragging my feet. And I just remember that feeling. I remember that I remember so much that I've used it since then to drive me whenever I feel like I need to sit down because I'm having a morning or I'm a little more tired, and just say, I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes to sit here and drink my coffee and move on. No, I know that the dopamine hit of sitting there and scrolling is going to be, whatever my brain is telling me in the moment I need. But I know that it's nowhere near as rewarding as it will be as if I get out of the house and go start crushing my day as early as I possibly can. What are you going to feel better about a couple hours from now? That you scroll through pointless videos on TikTok, that you sat there for an extra 10, 15 minutes and you put your day 10 or 15 minutes behind, or that you stayed consistent, you got there, you crushed the day, and you looked at your watch and you're like, man, I'm early, man, I'm on time. That's a way better feeling. And I haven't forgotten that one ever since. But again, it's that habit building. And I'm not saying I'm never going to do it again. There's probably going to be a day where I'm like, I am really sore and tired today. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to drink my coffee, and then I stay there for too long. And I'm going to say, see, you did it again, stupid. Don't do this. What did you learn? You didn't learn from last time. It's just the consistency and the straightening process. And we have to allow ourselves that space and grace to get to where it is we want to be, where we are straight and not held straightened. Think about how long some of these people, these motivational speakers like Wes Watson I'm talking about, and so many other people, think about how long they've been at it. Think about how much stuff they've been through to get to that place. Think about it from an athlete's perspective. They go through high school careers, college careers, into their pros. And before people are actually calling them great, they're 20 years in on a process, right? And think about just even from the standpoint of podcasting. I have thousands of hours into this in hundreds of episodes and stuff. I'm still a beginner. The last episode, it was awful. The sound quality was horrendous. I hated it. I wasn't feeling it that day. I got done with the episode and I was just like, this isn't my best work. But I sure as hell didn't quit over it. I didn't get down about it. I let it out because it was raw. It's like, you know what? This is part of what happens. This is the real part of sometimes what happens with this kind of stuff. You can't be perfect all the time. I'm motivated to get to a level where it's as perfect as it can be all the time. And so is the rest of my life. I think we're all striving to get to that place. And it's good to look up to certain people. It's good to aspire to be one of these super motivational speakers that have these videos all over YouTube and everything. It's great, but don't compare yourself to them. You know, if you want to admire someone, that's great. That's fine. If you want to emulate part of who they are, part of their personality, part of the philosophies that they have, you know, that's a great thing to have. Role models, we've had them since we were kids. You know, we had to learn from all the adults that we grew up with along the way. But you also have to do it within a certain realm of, I need to still become my own person. And if you're comparing yourself to somebody, you're often going to fall short. You're going to feel like you're falling short. Sometimes it can bring jealous energy as well, and a feeling of sort of lack about what you're missing because you don't measure up to who they are. You know, like I said, learning from those people is a great thing. It's a great example. But we all learn from people. We learn the right things and the wrong things sometimes too. And, you know, we copied and emulated people along the way while we were kids. And some examples were good, some were bad. But either way, we had to decide what we wanted to integrate into the being of who we are right now. And it's important to remember to take bits and pieces of all those different people along the way, and you can incorporate that into who you are. But there are going to be backslides. There are going to be times where that integration process feels like it's no longer on an incline, it's on a decline. It's part of the laws of polarity as well. You know, the swing to the left is equal to the swing to the right. So those things will come and go, and you have to have the grace of the process and know that the who you want to be and that end result is going to keep on building on that character that you're working on right now. The straightening process has to happen for you to become straight. And that is the phrase that you keep on referring to, but we want to aspire to become that straight version that we want to be. We want to keep on working on it. And until we get there, we have to keep on straightening it every single day, at every single moment that we realize that we're slipping or moving off of a desired path that we want to be on. But the most important part of it all is to remember that you have to cultivate all of it internally before anything's going to manifest outside of you, before anyone else is going to be able to see it externally. And it's not a reasonable expectation that your mindset is going to just be on the straight and narrow every single day when you wake up. And, you know, I guess the saying that I heard Wes Watson say, that you're never going to wake up straight. You're going to have to straighten yourself out every day. I think that it's true and not in a certain sense, that you're going to hopefully get to a place where you are more straightened now than ever, but you may always want to improve on that, which maybe that is what he was referring to. I guess from the mindset that I'm having is that if you set your goal for that who is somebody who can wake up every single day and they're on a great path. They've got the tools that they need to get to where they're going to go. They've got the things flowing in their life that they want to have. The straightening process gets you to right there. So to become that who, and you've done the straightening process to get to that straightened who has all that stuff, I guess that is what I was referring to. From there, we may set new goals, which will require more straightening, which is maybe what he was leaning towards, was that you're going to have to wake up every day and straighten yourself out. But every day is another opportunity to figure out what that trajectory even looks like. And sometimes it seems like we're on a hamster wheel of a process as well. It's like the movie Groundhog Day. You know, it's February, so that movie just came up recently. You know, and when I was a kid, that movie was so dumb. Like, it was the most boring movie ever. But the philosophy behind it in my later years and just the last few years, I actually learned to appreciate it a little bit more. And I think it was because I heard somebody talk about that this guy was forced to relive the same day over and over. If you're not familiar with the movie, he had to live the same day over and over. He was like an egotistical weatherman, and he had to go and go to this like podunk town and watch them do this whole groundhog festival thing. And the groundhog comes out, sees his shadow and everything. And he just lived the same day over and over and over again. And I saw that it was like he lived it 10,000 times. And I'm like, that's fascinating, actually. Like, I never really pondered how maddening that might actually be if you had to relive the same day like 10,000 times. It wasn't just a few hundred. You know, I guess after the few hundred, thousandth time, you'd go nuts. You know, he did. Like, at a certain point, he was doing certain things, and then he just tried to throw himself off a cliff to end it all, and drove off the cliff with the groundhog in the truck with him, throw a toaster in the bath with him at a certain point, and there was no escaping. So he shifted his mindset to one where he tried to start enjoying the day that he had to just keep on reliving every single day. And he started to do what he could in each one of those people's lives to improve their life. You know, he had to basically do something that raised himself to the point that it felt good for him, because it didn't really matter to those people. They weren't going to remember it the next day, but he was. And the path that he chose was one that was serving others. It was the most enlightened path that he possibly could have taken. And, he had to do the same things over and over again, but he kept on doing what was just the right thing to do. Really, the only one that was seeing the end result of it was him. And it was genuine virtue, it was integrity, one of the greatest virtues I think you can have. Doing the right thing when no one else is watching. And he was the only one that could see what was going on. He's the only one that ultimately knew in the end. And in the end, love is what broke the loop that he was stuck in. And I guess acting to just the highest possible chord that he could. And it was pretty amazing to watch it in my later years and understand it a little bit better. But, it was an area that he apparently was also avoiding growing in as well. It was one that he was most resistant in growing in, was the connection that he had with people. He was so egotistical and had a wall up around everybody in the whole movie. And then as it came down, he started to grow. And I think that's what happens with us, is that we avoid the things that are going to be the source of our greatest growth. I've done it. And I actually recently realized that I think I've done it with this podcast as well. I've put other things in front of this thing, as much time consuming and as much as I love doing it. It's also been a huge growth edge. If you guys aren't familiar with my story, go back and listen to earlier episodes. But the story of just putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, it's a big one. And the growth process has been huge. The growth edge on this entire thing, anything you step out into this world and do, anything that's new and scary, it's going to be a huge growth edge for you. And we'll often avoid doing those things. I mean, I'll go back to the gym. Like, there's certain exercises that I hate doing, and I will make sure that I do those first, because I know they're probably the areas I need to grow in the most. And this whole podcast thing is not an easy thing to do by any means, and once it started charting and getting bigger, it was something that I think I purposely delayed doing a little bit, just because it was a scary prospect. It was like, oh my goodness, this is real. My stomach flipped a few times when I saw some recent charts and everything. And I've had that happen to me before. Some of the greatest growth edges came from things that just absolutely terrified me. And I had to have a big comeback fight in boxing years after I had my second fight with cancer, and I'm there in front of 1,000 people. Like, part of me said, like, you can't do this. Turn around, make up an excuse. You got to get out of here. Like, this is something you can't do. You're crazy. And the other part of me said, no, you got to push through this. There's thousands of people. Your whole family's here. Everybody's watching. You're here to watch this whole thing. And it was one of the greatest growth edges that I ever had. And meeting those expectations of yourself in those kind of situations, and just sitting there realizing what you're actually capable of. It's an amazing thing. You appreciate something a lot more if you have to break a sweat to actually get it. And a lot of these things that we're avoiding are often the things that are going to make us break a sweat and our biggest growth edges. And it can tend to be something that we avoid just because the growth is tough. I recognize in so many different people, some of the hardest things that we have to do in our lives are just that, is the hardest thing is sometimes overcoming ourself. It's not just metaphoric. It's not just, it goes for so many different things in life. I'm trying to think of some other examples that I've had of different things like that, or other examples that other people have had, but there are just so many different ways that we have to put in that work. And it's distinct when you've done it and you recognized it in your own life, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But it is one of the most rewarding portions, I think, that we can actually turn around and look backwards on our life and realize that we've accomplished for ourselves. But when it comes to all the work that we put in to become that who do I have to become? Who is the person that wants to accomplish the goals that I want? Because if you're not able to become that person who can get it done, the place that you want to be is really always going to be out of reach for you. And your life, therefore, is always going to feel like it's a little bit incomplete. Mastering the self to overcome certain thoughts and beliefs and actions, it can be one of the hardest things as well. And it's an area that a lot of us might avoid wanting to grow in. But it's an undeniable recipe. When you can master the self, you can master so many other things externally in life, but mastering yourself has to come first. If you think you're going to master anything else in this world, but you cannot master who you are and the things that you know you need to grow on, the things you need to definitely improve upon in your life to become that who you say you want to be. If you can't get there, those things aren't going to manifest for you outside of your life. But it requires the work. It requires some internal work. It requires you to look in the mirror. You know, there's a popular saying that says life is a mirror. It's not a window. And when you look in the mirror, you have to be honest with yourself. That's a real tough thing for so many people to do. I've actually recently heard someone talk about mirror work, and I thought it was fascinating. So I actually tried it one day when nobody was home, because it does honestly make you feel pretty foolish, because part of it is you're sitting there talking to yourself in the mirror. But if you have never done it, I'll describe the process to you because it's pretty amazing. But you have to basically dedicate about a half an hour to the entire process. So for the first 15 minutes, you actually are there in front of a mirror. And the first 5 minutes of that, you just literally sit there and you're just looking in your own eyes and just gazing into your own eyes just to get that sort of grounded silence. And something weird happens when you do that. I can't quite describe it. And I've heard someone say the same exact thing before I did it. Like when you first do it, you're looking in the mirror and just there's something strange about looking into your own eyes for a huge long period of time and like a staring contest with yourself. So you do the exercise and you sit there for the 5 minutes and it makes you feel a little ridiculous at first. But there you are. You're literally sitting there staring at yourself without saying a word. And then the next 5 minutes, you're saying who you are now, all the things about you. You start to say the things that you like about yourself. Then you start to say things that you honestly don't like about yourself that you want to shed. Then you spend the last 5 minutes of that 15-minute exercise talking about the person you want to become and the parts of you that you wish you could change and the things that you're going to change. And then when it's all done, you go and journal for about 15 minutes or as long as it takes. Journal the entire process. You journal everything that came up in that entire process. And then you continue to do that again and again. And you bring those things into your life that you say into the mirror that you want to incorporate, and you let go of the things that you say you want to let go of. And as you repeat the process, you'll discover new things, or you'll reiterate the things that you said at one point. You'll eventually let go of the things that you're constantly reminding yourself in the mirror that you want to let go of. And you're going to incorporate a lot more of those things. And it sort of tunes in that vibration of the who you say you want to be and the who you say you want to turn into. And it's a process that's like forging metal, like we talked about in the beginning of the episode. You know, staring into that mirror is like the heating up phase, and talking about what you want to change and all the things you wish you could incorporate in your life. That's the hammering process. And then when you journal it on, you sort of let it marinate and cool down. You know, that's the where the hardened piece of steel comes through in the entire process. But that's what it all is, guys. It's a process. It's not something that is instant by any means. And I think that's a deadly recipe that we have in this world right now. The comfort and convenience that we have of everything in this world, this instant gratification stuff is just ridiculous. It's everywhere in this world, and it just keeps on getting worse and worse. The vanity of it and just the decadence of it sometimes is too much. And I feel like it does ruin this world to a certain extent. You know, the convenience can be great, but it also, the detrimental effects of it is very hard to overcome. Everything's at your fingertips now. You know, food is delivered. You don't actually have to meet people face to face anymore to be social. You know, you just pull open an app, and depending on how you want to meet people and what certain ways, and you know, it seems nice on the surface. You know, it seems convenient and everything, but people don't realize what that's actually doing to them. The instant gratification will erode your work ethic eventually. It will erode that ability to grind out the tough stuff, because you'll be so conditioned that you don't have to grind anything out because everything just comes so easily. So when the inevitable parts of your life do show up and you have to grind something out, it's going to make it a lot harder. The process is going to be so much more difficult, and it's going to make a completely different impact in your life, and you won't be conditioned. You won't be ready for it. You know, people think contentment is just something that just shows up and it's just going to come to them. And honestly, it won't. No matter what you get, you know, there's that saying that I've said quite a few times that, you know, rich people are just miserable in a nicer part of town driving a better car. It's true. Like, you have to find some of these things and not have to rely on something else to help you find them. And the contentment stuff, if you're always waiting for something to make you content, it's likely always going to be that way in your life. And, you know, I can agree to a certain extent that it's hard to be miserable while you're zipping around on a jet ski or you're driving a nice sports car around town, but it's not the end all be all. It's not what should be required to get us there. Life is going to come at you in any way, shape, or form, and especially these growth edges, they're going to come at you. You got to put in the work to get to the other side sometimes. And if you're waiting for just the end result to be delivered to you like DoorDash, you're going to be completely let down. You got to learn to love the process. Even the negative parts of it, you still have to learn to love that process. You got to learn to love being hammered on like that iron, because if you're negative about it, that's a low vibratory state in your brain. It's restrictive when you're angry about your life and all those different emotions. If you look at the Hawkins scale of consciousness, the lower levels of emotion are going to keep you in a lower level of vibration. And those low levels are restrictive and they're contracting. They're not expansive. They're not connective. It's the opposite of what we need to have to reach out into the world energetically and magnetizing those things in those circumstances into our life. And, those opportunistic synchronicities that will pop up, you got to be open to them. You got to be expansive. Those 1 in a million chances and odds of things happening, whether it's crossing paths with the right person, winning the lottery, whatever it is. Like if you're constrictive, that energy is extremely constrictive and it's not reaching out there to observe all the potential avenues and horizons those things can manifest into your life. But it's all internal cultivation. That is one of the biggest things that you have to really grasp, is that it is all a process that's all internal. Sometimes you have to learn to love the bad stuff, and it sounds so like such an oxymoron, but it's the truth. You have to learn to accept it all, straighten it out when it's not straight, find yourself when it's hard to find yourself, and get yourself up off that couch when you feel like sitting down and doing the doom scrolling in the morning, but get yourself out of the house and get your day going early, because you'll know the reward of it all when it's all said and done. You'll know how valuable that entire process actually is once you've done it and you've gotten there a few times. You'll wish that you started this yesterday. You'll wish that you started this journey earlier, but it doesn't matter when you start it. It just matters that you realize you're on this journey and you've got a place to be and you want to get there, and you're going to find the who, you're going to find yourself, you're going to master the self, and you're going to let go of all those other yesterdays and work for a better tomorrow. And that's all that matters. So for everybody on Wisdom, I'm going to wrap this episode up. If there's anybody that would like to jump up on stage real quick and do a quick 5-minute chat about anything you might have heard on this episode today, I will leave that open for the next minute or so. If I don't see anybody jump on here, I want to close out the episode. But I will take 1 or 2 people because I am a little limited on time tonight. But if anybody would like to jump up on stage, tap that button and get up here and we can have a quick chat if you got any thoughts to share on this episode. Angelina joining me again.
Hey, good to hear you. I saw you doing a bunch of tests earlier this week.
Oh, it was
Did
ridiculous.
It all worked out?
I hope so. There's no echo this time, is there?
Nope.
So that
Sounds
means
good.
I did it.
High five. So I just am appreciating your podcast, and I'm glad that you're doing it on here too. And this stand straight, not straightened. I really just, I think about like my morning routine, and that it's that generative time of day, right? When you're just like, okay, this is the part where the rest of my day, this is like the foundation for the rest of my day. And getting your head straight, and the ways that it can kind of go sideways if you're not just really on top of it and committed to it. I am finding it inspirational to just kind of have it framed like this.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just kind of just slip into a routine and then not really pay attention to that there is a routine going on, right? Mm-hmm. And if part of the routine is actually getting your head straight first, it just bodes well. And I also really appreciated the sharing about the mirror exercise. I don't know that I've done a little bit of mirror work over the years, but I don't know that I've ever heard the version that you presented, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Yeah.
It was definitely an interesting process for me when I did it, when I did the mirror work. It was the first time it was really uncomfortable. And then afterwards, I actually saw the benefits right away. It was like, okay, I remembered this conversation I've had with myself last time, and they carry through you through the day. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm totally going to try that tomorrow. First thing in my head straightening routine. And then the how, not who. The who, not how. The who, not how
Yeah.
piece. Yeah. And how it ties in with the mirror work. I'm just appreciating what you shared with us tonight. I wanted to come up and say so.
I appreciate you jumping back on. I don't know if you caught the episode that you were on before, but you made it to the final cut of it. So
yeah, that's super cool. I totally went back and got a chance to hear it. And yeah, that was great. Awesome. Thanks for including me there in that.
I appreciate the contributions. This has been really cool to get on Wisdom. I've gotten on Clubhouse and tried it on there as well, but I feel like it's the participation factor on here for what sort of the end result is that I'm looking for when we're trying to have just people come up and have a one-way conversation. Clubhouse is a little clunky lately. It's kind of changed up quite a bit, but it's been great having some of you folks come up here and contribute, and looking to do this a lot more often now that we figured out the technical glitches.
Yeah, well, good job on that. And yeah, just thank you. And that's it. That's really all I wanted to say. Just appreciated everything you shared tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, look forward to more.
With that, I'm going to segue into the song I'm going to leave everybody with. This song is a new one from Eula. This one's called Yesterday.
Let's not pretend we gave it all.
Until next time, everybody, keep putting in the work. Keep being the who that is going to get the stuff that you want later on in life. Become the person who is standing straight and doesn't have to be straightened every day. But until then, straighten yourself out and just know it's all part of the process of living this life.
Yesterday.
A conscious thought leader, an expert on inspiration, or have your own amazing story to tell about how you've manifested your best life, we want you on the show. You can connect with us by writing to connect@livethislife.org. That's CONNECT@livethislife.org. Or you can reach out to us through the show's Calendly page at calendly.com/livethislife. And be sure to check out everything going on with the podcast at livethislife.org.